This is an analysis from Alpha Business Media. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're strapping in for a really high-stakes analysis of urban planning, zeroing in on the future of Kathmandu. And this isn't just about growth. It's really about a binary choice.
Yeah.
By 2040, is it going to be a cautionary tale of urban decay or, a testament to strategic foresight, a modern metropolis? We're diving into some fascinating research that argues the outcome doesn't hinge on hope, but on three very specific choices that have to be made, well, right now.
And that's really the mission here. These terms you always hear, smart cities, sustainable housing, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
But the sources we've looked at, they basically call them hollow buzzwords if you don't look at the mechanics underneath. We're not interested in the paint job. We want to look at the engine of urban development.
Some framing is so essential because it forces us past just the visible hardware and into the actual policy architecture. The analysis identifies three critical pillars that are going to determine the city's entire path, and their interdependent failure in one poisons the others.
That's it, exactly. We have to analyze, first, the data and governance, the stuff needed to power a genuine smart city, not just cameras. Second, the material economics of sustainable building, really challenging how things are built. And third, the financial models you need to actually fund a livable city. These three are the difficult governance revolutions that have to happen.
Okay, let's unpack that first pillar. The digital architecture, or what the material calls the ghost in the machine. When we say smart city, the first thing people think of is visible tech. CCTV, smart streetlights, things like that.
Which is superficial. Sometimes it's even counterproductive if the foundation isn't there. The analysis makes a very clear point. A city gets smart not by buying gadgets, but by using real-time integrated data to make predicted decisions. And Kathmandu's biggest problem right now is what the sources call a catastrophic data infrastructure gap.
Okay, that sounds technical, but what does that actually look like for someone, say, stuck in traffic?
It looks like pure organizational chaos. The best way to think about it is trying to run a huge company where every single department uses different software and refuses to share information. You've got the Nepal Electricity Authority with power data, the water utility KUKL knows where pressure is failing, and the municipalities have all the permits.
And these are all operating in what the analysis calls institutional fiefdoms. They own their data and they don't cooperate.
Exactly. And the data isn't just siloed. It's in completely different formats. Some is in the cloud, some on old desktops, and believe it or not, a lot of it is still in physical ledger books. There's no central nervous system. So intelligent oversight is just impossible.
So here's the crucial point then. How does that fragmentation stop something practical, like fixing traffic? Because just installing new cameras seems like an easy fix.
But new cameras are often just, expensive window dressing. A truly smart traffic system has to do more than just show you a traffic jam. It has to prevent it. And to do that, it needs to pull in 3 or 4 different data streams at once. The CCTV feeds, sure, but also GPS data from public buses, and critically, event data. A festival permit, a road maintenance schedule from a totally separate office.
Right, so if the traffic agency doesn't know the water utility has dug up a major road, the system can't reroute anything.
And you get the same old gridlock. The tech is useless without the governance to back it up.
Precisely.
And that's why the sources are so clear that the solution here is not a technology purchase. It is a governance revolution. It requires building a central urban data repository, a functional digital twin of Kathmandu.
But if it's about courage, what's the actual political tool you use to break up these fiefdoms?
It has to be legislation with real teeth. The key takeaway is the need for an act, a data sharing and standardization act that forces all these public bodies to cooperate. It means mandating common APIs, common data standards. You have to make non-compliance more painful than just sticking with the status quo.
That's a perfect transition to the physical city. We've talked digital, now let's talk bricks and mortar. Most people hear sustainable housing and they just picture solar panels on a normal concrete building.
And that completely misses the biggest part of the problem, which is embodied carbon.
Right.
Embodied carbon is all the emissions created across a material's entire life, from pulling it out of the ground, processing it, shipping it, all the way to construction. It's the carbon footprint you lock in the day you pour the foundation.
And Nepal's current approach has created what the analysis calls a high carbon trap.
It absolutely has.
Yeah.
There's this overwhelming reliance on what they call the cement rebar duopoly, ordinary Portland cement and imported steel. So every new building starts its life with this huge embodied carbon footprint. It's a massive environmental cost.
And Beyond the environmental side, you mentioned a big economic drain. Can you break that down for us?
It's a major vulnerability. Nepal has to import most of its clinker, the key ingredient for cement, and also its steel. So every time there's a construction boom, it puts a huge strain on the country's foreign currency reserves. By tying their housing strategy to these imports, they're basically internalizing global supply chain shocks while, externalizing the environmental damage.
So future-proofing means you have to disrupt this. You have to push for local low-carbon materials. What are the real alternatives here?
The analysis points to two main paths. First is prefabricated construction, moving away from building everything on site. So things like light gauge steel frames or structural insulated panels, SSP. These cut down waste, they speed up construction, and the quality control is much better because it's all done in a factory.
And then there's engineered timber, cross-laminated timber, or CLT. Why is that such a game changer in this context?
Well, CLT is revolutionary for two reasons. First, it's a carbon sink. The trees absorb carbon, and when you put that timber into a building, that carbon is locked away for decades. It's an immediate climate win. And second, which is critical for Kathmandu, CLT has performed incredibly well in seismic tests. It's strong, it's light. Promoting it would create a whole new local industry, connecting forestry to high-tech manufacturing.
It sounds like a win-win, economically and environmentally. So if these materials are better, why is the building code basically blocking them?
Institutional inertia. It's baked into the Nepal National Building Code, the NBC. The current code is what we call prescriptive. It tells you what materials to use, and it defaults to concrete frames. So the approval process for a new material like CLT is, well, it's opaque, it's bureaucratic, and it's way too expensive for any local startup to even try. It just protects the old guard.
So the shift isn't just updating the code, it's changing its entire philosophy.
Exactly. The reform has to be a radical switch to a performance-based building code. This stops mandating materials and starts specifying results. So it says a building has to withstand a certain seismic load, have a certain fire rating. If you can prove your new low-carbon material meets those performance targets, it gets approved, period. And you have to back that up with R&D grants and a streamlined national lab to make innovation possible.
We have the digital revolution, the material revolution. Now, let's talk money. How do you actually fund all this? The line we always hear from cities is, we just don't have the funds.
And the analysis just forcefully rejects that idea, calls it a failure of financial imagination. You have to look at the costs of doing nothing. Billions are lost every year from traffic congestion, from pollution-related healthcare costs, from property values tanking in neglected areas. The money isn't missing. It's being actively lost and not captured.
That's a key distinction, moving from deficits to value creation. This brings in something called value capture financing, or VCF. Let's break that down. How does it work?
So VCF is a model where public projects, like a new metro line or a big park, are paid for by capturing a bit of the private real estate value they create. The government improves the city, which makes private land more valuable. VCF just makes sure the public gets a share of that new value to pay for the project. Public infrastructure becomes a value-generating investment, not just a cost.
So if the city builds a new transit line, the land around the stations becomes way more valuable. The government then takes a slice of that new wealth to pay off the debt for the transit system.
That's the core idea. And the analysis details two models for Kathmandu. The first is a special assessment district. Let's say the city pedestrianizes a long corridor. Property owners within a certain radius pay a small extra levy for, say, 10 years.
But why would they agree to pay an extra tax?
Because the value of their property goes up way more than the cost of the levy. If the tax costs them an extra 50,000 rupees a year, but their property value jumps by 5 million because the area is now clean, walkable, and desirable. It's a huge net gain for them. They're funding their own benefit.
And the second model is tax increment financing, or TIF.
TIF is for redevelopment zones. The city sets the current property tax revenue from that area as a baseline. Then it borrows money to invest heavily in new roads, parks, utilities. As a result, property values shoot up. The increment, that's all the new tax revenue collected above that original baseline, is ring-fenced. It's used only to pay off the debt for the improvements.
That's clear. So if the area generated 100 units of tax before and now it generates 300, those extra 200 units are what automatically fund the project itself.
Precisely. It's a self-funding loop that doesn't touch the general city budget.
But VCF and TIF seem to depend entirely on one thing you mentioned earlier, property valuation. If you can't accurately value the land before and after, the whole system just falls apart, right?
It completely collapses. VCF requires huge systemic changes. You need to overhaul municipal finance laws. But most of all, you need a transparent, accurate, and trusted property valuation system. Right now, many of those systems are opaque or outdated, so you can't even verify the value you're trying to capture. It cripples the mechanism from the start.
And for private investors in a public-private partnership, having that dedicated revenue stream must totally change the risk calculation.
Oh, absolutely. A PPP for a new rail system is suddenly much less risky if VCF guarantees a revenue stream from the land value it creates. It changes the entire conversation from how can we afford this to how do we structure this deal to unlock the value we know we're creating.
So looking ahead to 2040, the analysis presents these two very different paths, and it stresses that the next 5 years are critical. What are the two scenarios?
The first is the path of least resistance. This is a future defined by disconnected tech, where the data silos are still there. You get cosmetic greenwashing on high-carbon buildings, and public spaces get neglected while officials just blame budget deficits. But 2040, on this path, Kathmandu is more congested, more polluted, more stratified, and it's burdened by huge import bills. It's a fragile, high-friction future.
And the other path, the integrated one that actually builds a resilient metropolis.
That's the integrated path. And it depends completely on embracing these foundational reforms we've been talking about, the unified data, the performance-based codes, and value capture financing. The outcome there is a network of efficient, walkable green communities. Kathmandu becomes a regional hub for green tech and urban analytics. It means a higher quality of life, one that attracts and keeps talented people.
It sounds like a clear blueprint, but the analysis is pretty blunt about why this is so hard to achieve. What's the fundamental hard truth here?
The hard truth, according to the sources, is that the biggest obstacle is not a lack of technology or capital or even vision. It's a deficit of institutional courage.
That's a powerful phrase. Why is courage the missing ingredient?
Because every one of these reforms requires confronting powerful vested interests who benefit from the broken status quo. Think about who wins right now. Agency heads who control their data silos, the cement and steel lobbies who profit from a code that blocks competitors, officials who benefit from an opaque property tax system. Without the political will to force that structural change, master plans are just expensive documents that sit on a shelf.
So to summarize the core insights for you, the listener, it's about governance over gadgets, performance over prescription, and value capture over budget deficits. Those are the levers.
And they are all connected. You can't manage construction permits without good data, and you can't fund infrastructure for new materials without sound finance. It's all one big knot.
So our final thought for you to take away is a systems-level question. We've laid out 3 points of resistance: the data silos, the material lobbies, and the outdated finance laws. Which one of those is the most fragile? Which one, if you could crack it, would unlock the most momentum for the other two?